there's some fundamental similarities in how all the rendering programs work and in how all the animation programs work. And if we look at that in Revit, then we'll be able to transfer that to whichever other application you're using. What all the animation programs do, and this comes from when people were doing, Sleeping Beauty and that kind of stuff by hand. Whatever the thing is that you're looking at, in this case, sort of a building, the idea is to create a camera path into or through that space. Let's just say it's going to be sort of like this, starting here and then ending up inside the space. And along that path, you put a number of keyframes, stamp, keyframes. And typically at Disney or something, the head animator of the studio would draw those in some detail. I want it to be here, and then moving over to the castle door, and then moving through into the castle. And then there would be people called tweeners, whose job was to create all the little frames in between to make that one smooth motion. And that process was called tweening, and that has come over into this environment. So what'll be happening is we're going to set up these guys, and then the program will interpolate all the steps in between as it's moving the camera along the path, as well as moving what the camera is aiming at. And there are like 15 of these per second of animation. We will be setting up just those 3 where they are in plan and where they are in elevation. And then Revit will take care of making all the smooth adjustments from one to the next to get us into that. I think the major thought of it is to think ahead what you want to show. And if you're doing it for Schneider Hall, whether you're doing it for some other project, what feature of the design you want to show, and then what path, what camera track is going to show that best, and how can you show that and not show a lot of other stuff. And something that we've run into with like medical facilities is people will have a really great lobby and reception space, and we sort of come in from the building lobby into that and sort of swirl around, look at it, and then end up with another 40 seconds of just walking down narrow halls that like tells nobody anything. We've all been down the narrow halls of medical offices, because all this is going to take time to set up, time to render, and you sort of end up doing it again and again and again. So do a lot of editing ahead of time. If there were 3 or 4 rooms, you had a lobby, and then you had a ballroom or something, right? You wanted to show them together. It might well be better to do a couple of short ones rather than spend a lot of time walking down the hall to get from the lobby to the ballroom, unless it's a glorious hallway. We don't have the ability within Revit to combine separate videos into one, but there's other software, free, like Movie Maker, that can do that. There's free on the web to put them together. Okay, so the way this works in Revit is really just like what I showed you, except it gets a little crazy. And I'm just going to go through this in like exactly the order it's here on the page, because that's the only way I can remember how to do it. First of all, we can do live walkthroughs, not recorded, but just to show the space to somebody. So if I get into a camera view, 3D view camera, and just set it up looking, I remove the wall of this building just so we could sort of see into it. With the tools over here, let's use the full navigation wheel. Oh, just click on it. We got a couple of tools here we can use to give us a sense maybe of what it's going to be like when we animate it. And first of all, with this tool, whichever one is clicked is the active one, only ones at a time. So zoom is sort of a combination of actually moving through the space and using like a zoom lens to make things bigger at the same time. It's not a true zoom where the camera stays fixed and you're just sort of broadening or narrowing the field of view. Walk is a little more controlled. With walk, you click walk, and then as you drag your cursor up, you move in. As you drag your cursor back, you move out. As you move slowly back and forth that way, but it's mostly for moving in and out of the space. Up and down moves the camera, if you like, higher and lower in the space, including underneath it. If you want to pop back out. Look pivots the camera on the tripod, stays in the same place but looks in different directions. Center picks what will be in the center of the image when you use the orbit tool, the thing that stays put. So you can, if we had a more complex model, walk down halls with the walk tool, get to a corner, look down the hall in the other direction, and keep on going. So it's not great for polished live presentations because it's easy to screw up. But if you just want to show a client or something sort of what you're thinking of, it works out pretty well and gives a much better sense of being in the space than a series of stills. An even better tool made for just this purpose would be one of the two building tour wheels, which have fewer options but behave more predictably for moving around in a space. Pan moves the camera right and left, still looking in the same direction, but physically sliding left and right. Nice tool here is rewind, because a lot of times you mess up or want to go back to something else. Click on that and you get all the previous views that you've been to as you've been doing all this stuff. Go back to my original one. So we will have those tools available to us as we set what each keyframe is looking at, and then Revit will smoothly interpolate between those to create the intermediate ones. So we never like jump into a view. We're always sort of eased into it from the previous one. So I'm going to turn that off and start to create an actual walkthrough. And I'll do it sort of like I did on the whiteboard. Go to camera walkthrough, and this is always generated in plan and then viewed in perspective. It's always a 3D thing that we're creating. Walkthrough. I'm just going to start over here. And that V is sort of showing the direction the camera is looking. And then I'll go to here, and then I'll turn around into the corner. And once I've done that, I go to finish walkthrough. And at this point, I'm going to bring up the walkthrough. Revit created the walkthrough folder over here in the project browser. And here's walkthrough 1. And it ended up like this. And I'm finding it very helpful right away to go to view, tile views. So I see these two views at the same time because they're both telling me stuff that the other one can't quite tell me. So here in the walkthrough view, if I click edit walkthrough, we'll get a new series of controls up in the ribbon and the option bar. And you'll see here we ended up at the final one. So I'm going to click on previous keyframe. And this reminds me, I need to set that far clipping, turn far clipping off. So I'll turn it off, and this will affect the whole view so we don't lose our background there. And then I'll keep backing up until I get to this view, which is the first one here. No. And what you can see is the reason that I'm just getting a blank screen from this first camera is I'm aiming over this way. I'm not even seeing the building. So over here in the plan view, I have a couple of options. I can be changing the view that my active camera is seeing. I can be changing the shape of the path itself. But I'm going to use this active camera mode. And when that's going, this first keyframe is active. And here's the point that it's aiming at. And I'm just going to steer that over to here. So we can preview over there what that first frame is going to look like. And I think all I'll do is try to keep the building approximately centered for each of these views. And then I'm going to go to the to the next keyframe. I forget how to do this. Edit walkthrough next keyframe, which will be the middle one. And I'm just going to aim this over. So again, the building is approximately centered. And then I'll go to the next keyframe. And that's fine. Just looking at the corner of the building. So if I keep going back, in this view, if I hit play, we will see the camera moving along the path and see which direction it's looking at and where it is. So each of these represents a little, a frame being generated. Well, that's pretty exciting. But then we'll do it over in this view, make the walkthrough view active and hit play. And we will see the results of those individual camera tweening ones being set up. And this happens very quickly in wireframe, slower in hidden line because it's got to think about which parts of the building to hide at each time. It's slower as you go farther and farther down that list of visual styles. But just like anything else, we can change this to a realistic view. Kick it back to play. It's still a little jerky because having to calculate each of those one at a time. And really all we'll be doing when we export this to an animation file, usually in AVI format, is basically taking each of these frames, magically mashes them all together and turns them into a video. But it's really exactly the same thing going on. Before we get too far into this, I want to set the proportions of this view, the right proportions for YouTube or something or other. And with that will be, I want to stop editing the walkthrough. I just want to pick the frame here. Whenever you're dealing with a walkthrough, you don't pick it in here, you pick the edge of it. That's how you grab it, that's its handle. And I'll go to size crop. And if I want, I said in here, 16 by 9 is standard sort of widescreen proportions. That would be 16 inches by 9 inches. Or if we do half of that, be 8 inches by 4.5 inches is the same proportions. So I'm going to change this 6 inches to 8 inches. And it gets accordingly wider. To be sure I don't accidentally change the proportions, I can pin the frame to lock its size. So let's just quickly save this so we know what's going on. Just take this short clip and save it out to a video. To do that, you might have several walkthroughs, one for the reception, one for the ballroom. You make the one you want to export be current. Go to File, Export, and we scroll down here to Images and Animations. Maybe I have to, I actually have to have that selected. File, Export, Images and Animations, Walkthrough. And we have a couple of choices that I'm just going to accept all of them right now. The program picks up the visual style that's there. We can change that here if we want to, but I'll just leave it there. And I'll leave these dimensions, these actual pixel dimensions the same. I'm just going to sort of accept all these defaults right here, right now. Say OK. And then I'm going to say where to put it, and we'll say walkthrough 1. And lastly, we have just like with JPEG and those, we have the option to compress this file so it doesn't take up so much time when you're uploading it. Right now, we'll just do it uncompressed. We have a couple of different ways to compress them. I'm just going to take full frame. We'll see what differences those make. Okay. So as Revit is rendering each of these frames, it's also writing them out to the AVI file on disk. And this can be fully rendered if you want to do that within Revit. It's just going to take, instead of a second per frame, it might take 2 minutes per frame. But who has that kind of time, really? And I keep coming back to this question of how photorealistically perfect do things have to be to convey what you want to do to your client or to your whoever is looking at this stuff. I see amazing computer generated images on LinkedIn and everywhere else. I confess that I no longer have the urge to do that, but you do what you feel called to do. Okay, so here, that just happened. Let me shut down Revit for a little bit, and we just created model for animation. Thank you. There we go. And it just has the name of the model plus walkthrough 1 plus the AVI file extension. We'll bring that up. So cute. A couple of things here you can see is the resolution's not that great because we didn't render it to lots of pixels. More pixels takes more time. There's always a time to quality trade-off. The more quality you want, the more time it'll take. So that's that. Student who graduated from here 2 or 3 years ago found this great gig with a firm in Minnesota or somewhere where she does the design, and then the company has a whole stable of people who just do the photorealistic renderings and stuff. It's a really nice situation to get into. So she can be paying attention to the client's needs and how to meet them instead of wrestling with the computer end of things. So a couple things about this. It's low resolution, and notice that the camera is all here right at the same height, which is set by default at like 5'6". Let's get out of there. Go back to Revit. So that's sort of getting through page 1, just the basic, simple setup of what we need to do, plus exporting it. Okay, so animation fine tuning. Let me do another animation. We'll add some interior walls and doors and windows. We're going to come into this room and look that way. Let's do this. 3D view, walk through. I'm just going to come. I don't want to take a lot of time outside the building, so I'll just like start right here, come through the door, and look over that way. Finish walkthrough. Walkthrough number 2. Let me hide number 1. Tile views. So here in this view, edit walkthrough, I'm going to back up to my previous positions and say play. I'm coming into the building, sort of into that corner. Going to come through the door. And then into the other room, into this guy out here. Now let's imagine that we would like to have more of a sense of swooping into it from somewhere above, coming in. I think I'll just go back to my walkthrough 1 again, just because the cameras are farther apart. Tile views, ZA. And walkthrough 1, I want to bring up that camera. This is what I always forget, is once I've got the walkthrough, oh, there we go. Just double click on it here and camera shows back up again here. And what I want to do here is to raise these cameras higher so it'll feel like we're flying in from above. And the easiest way to do this is just go to edit walkthrough. We're on the first keyframe right here. So I'm just going to use my these tools just to raise my camera up. Raise my camera up and then look down a bit. So that's where I'll start. And then we'll see how this next one works. Revit's going to sort of smooth everything out. So let's just see how that works. Let's just go to play. Get a little more sense of the three-dimensionality of things. And I see that what that's done is sort of put my middle camera sort of low. So I think I'm going to move that middle camera up maybe half as much before we sort of come on into here. You can't do this in the intermediate frames. You can only do it in the keyframes, which is where you actually set those views. Next keyframe will be here. And in this one, I want to use the full navigation wheel. Full navigation wheel. Up. Up. And Revit will be smoothing everything through here. So let me just try that. I just erased that wall, yeah. You could hide it, you can make it transparent, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, anything you can do in regular view, you can do here. Apparently, I didn't quite fix that the way I wanted to. There's my final keyframe. So there's the first one. There's the second one. This is the one I want to move up. Move the camera up. Then next keyframe. Previous. Next keyframe. So for some reason, this hasn't taken. It hasn't remembered this. I'm on a keyframe. Previous keyframe. Up, down. Up, down. Very strange. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure that out. Let's go to edit walkthrough. Next keyframe is there. Previous keyframe. Right here, guys. No. Next keyframe. No, it worked great for that one. Why didn't it work great for this one? I'm trying to just raise. I start with a high camera and then I come down to two that are level with each other. I'm just trying to raise that middle camera up so it's a smooth path in. And the thing is, you can do this in the elevation views as well. Oh, well, there we go. So I'm actually not moving. Oh, active camera. Oh, that's what I needed. Adjusting a camera position, you do with the path control. I was trying to do it with the active camera control, which controls where it aims, but not where it is. Okay, important lesson learned. The up-down control only works for the first keyframe. All the other keyframe cameras must be moved up or down using the path option in an elevation view. So as you can tell, there's some jumping around to do here, boys and girls. Let's go to play. We'll come in like this, coming in towards my middle camera, which is about halfway up. And not to knock Revit too much or to tout Enscape too much, but Enscape makes this a whole lot easier and faster and quicker and intuitive. But this is the idea. This is how this happens. And we could, I'll render that out just to have it on disk. Okay. And it's going to ask me, do I want to replace the first one? And I'll say yes. Otherwise, I could tag something onto the file name. We'll say okay. Oh, something I've done on all my computers is I've set them never to turn themselves off. Not to go to sleep, because if you realize that this is going to take 2 hours and you set it starting at midnight, you don't want it just stopping at 2 a.m. I don't care how much power it uses. I mean, plug it in and just leave it on. Never have your hard drive go to sleep. Never have your screen go to sleep. Just work them all the way through. Okay, save the project. So if we go back out to look at this one, this is this guy. So our adjusted path and our new wall. I'd like to address a couple of things. One is making it look better, and another is making it look more real. And one thing that just doesn't look real is all the black lines and everything. I mean, the real world just does not have those. Here, I'm skipping ahead a little bit towards page 4, and what I want to avoid, since true rendering, each frame is just a killer in terms of the time that it takes. I have here something that will give us a fair approximation of a fully rendered work through in a lot less time. And that is, whatever we do here in any of these views will affect the whole animation, is to go to realistic, we know that, and then graphic display options. Realistic, we turn the edges off. We will check this smooth lines thing. Anti-aliasing is where two things that would normally meet with sort of a zigzag of stepped pixels gets a blend between them. I'm going to turn shadows, both of those guys on. I'm going to set my lighting so that it only, basically what happens when you have relative to view checked, the lighting will always be coming in from the same direction relative to the camera. So as you move the camera through the space, it's as if the sun is moving. And I don't want that to happen. I want the sun to be constant, the shadows to stay in the same place. So we uncheck that. Okay. We go back to here, I did the sun at 70. This is the outdoor sun. Ambient light at 30, we haven't talked about that, but it's sort of just general illumination with no actual source. Shadows muted at 30. Okay, that's for the lighting. We're not rendering it, so we're just so that's sort of what the look will be. Not so shabby, not so shabby. Okay, and what I like about those, the ambient shadows are the ones that gather in the corners of things. This is all you need, because it's not a rendering. And a couple of things it won't do, which is, like reflections of things in chrome surfaces. Just so you know, we'll miss a couple of that, but this is great, Somebody had asked about a background. Since this isn't a rendering, that will be in the regular view settings. Camera. No, this is for rendering, sorry. Oh, that's down here in graphic display options as well, where we set a background where, what did I say? Let's use a sky background and set the ground plane to this light greeny feel and see what happens. I don't know, I always forget.
Gray green sky background. Okay, apply. Okay. So we'll get that. And this is where you could put your own image in. Maybe not. Let's just see what happens. Pick it, edit, walkthrough, play. So we got shadow on the grass back here. The problem with our own image inserted in there is it doesn't really know where the horizon is, whereas Revit does have a sense of where that's happening out there. This will take a lot longer with interior lighting turned on, just so you know. And in fact, I've got some cove lights up there above the ceiling. Let me change this over the view to in graphic display options. Turning cast shadows on is really the same thing as turning the sun on. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Let's select this, edit walkthrough. Well, you do get a sense of the ceiling being lit over there, but it's not a truly rendered view. However, once you've previewed this way, you can then render out. Let's just try rendering out to an animation. It's not an option here in the just the way we're doing it now. But if I go to File, Export, Images, Walkthrough, and change this to rendering. I should have tested rendering first. So let me cancel that and just go to RR for render. Okay, so that's sort of a look that we'll start bringing into the rendered animation, which I think I'll just go ahead and do. That's how that'll render, export. Change this from realistic to rendering. And we'll just see how long this takes. It'll take a while. Okay, rendered. Oops. Okay. So it basically has to do this for each frame. So I don't really want to go through this because this will be, half an hour or something rather. But it's interesting to me that it's not rendering it to the screen each time, maybe in the interest of saving a couple of seconds per frame. Well, let's see if we can maybe just get a little look at what that file was out there. Okay, so there's only like 3 frames, but you can see that it's there and it renders as expected from what we'd done before. And this model was built just to see how these cove lights would work. So I'm not surprised that we're not getting anything better than that. I put on page 4 standard resolutions. The 1920 by 1080 is a very common size. That's the 16 by 9. So you can make your image in Revit be the 8 inches by 4.5 inches. And then once you get into this view, select it, File, Export, Images and Animations, Walkthrough. That's when we could set this to the 1920 and that'll just automatically change. So that would be that's standard 1080p resolution for the internet and for movies and TV screens and that kind of stuff. At the top of page 3, if you want to slow things down, let's say to come in fast and then slow down once you're inside the room, we can pick it, go to Edit Walkthrough, select the view, and then let's just make sure I get this right. We've selected it, it's active, and then down at the bottom, a walkthrough view has this one extra category in properties, which is how many frames. And by default, this is 20 seconds times 15 frames a second, so 300 frames, and just going as uniform speed through the place. If we would like to slow it down so that by the end we're going much more slowly, I'll say uncheck uniform speed. And let's say I'm going to start slowing down at the middle one and go at only at half speed by the time we're out the other side. So being going full speed here, 0.75 here, and 0.5 by the time we come out that way. And this is helpful when you're going around corners, especially. So this, however, will, let's say, apply. It's still going to keep the same total duration at this point. So so if we got more frames through here, that means we're going to have fewer of them out through there. If we want the whole thing to just take longer or shorter than what we saw before, like that was sort of tedious sliding all the way in through there, that whole thing. If we just want the whole thing to be half as long as that, let's just say 150 frames. So now it'll play in 10 seconds as opposed to in 1. Half as many frames, half the time. And typically broadcast quality stuff goes out at 24 frames a second instead of 15, which is usually used for this kind of stuff. So you can do that. And then the last thing I would be was, what if you'd like to circle the building instead? Circle the building, circle the statue, something like that. And the best way I found to do this, it's hard to place points in a circle unless they're on a circle. So I go into Annotate, Detail Line, Circle. I use this as I'm going to place my points along there and go to View, 3D View, Walkthrough. Say I start here, come to here, come to here, come to here, come back to there. And then at this point, all of these views aren't even looking at the building. So I wanted to go to Edit Walkthrough and go Active Camera. And then each of these, I'm going to drag its aiming button so it's looking at the building. Previous keyframe. Oh, previous keyframe. Previous keyframe. Previous keyframe. Previous keyframe. No. So then I will select this, play. That's not what I expected. Cancel, yes. Yes. So get into here. Oh, that's because that's walkthrough 1. That was the confusion. I created walkthrough 3. Now I need to bring that up. Tile views. So here's where we're starting, looking at the building from the rear. And we'll click here, click edit walkthrough, click play. And the effect is of rotating the building around in front of us. And obviously I should be turning off bar clip active once that gets to be an option here. And you saw there's that weird effect where it looked as if it was getting larger and smaller, just because as we're, even though it's a circle, as we're going around it, the corner that starts out being, let's say, 50 feet away from us, over here is now just 30 feet away, so it's proportionally larger in the size, in the scale. So I guess really we'd want to move these even farther back, maybe move all them farther away. I always forget how to get back here to my camera controls. Maybe I have to be in this view where I can move them. Let's go to path, which is where I actually move cameras. Next camera. Next camera. Oh, I can just drag them this way, can't I? So here's a place where I think I want to add some keyframes, which we haven't done yet, out there, so I can get a better sense of a circle around the space. And then go back and do something like this. Woo! Got to be careful, Control Z. Or I didn't mean to put an extra point in there, so I'm gonna have to get into this view to be remove keyframe. I want to get rid of that guy. And then I want to go back to path so I can just move these around to be more circular and farther away, so it doesn't look like it's coming and going on us quite as much. Maybe that'll work. Trying to get about the same distance away from that initial circle. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, number three. No, oh, play. So that's good. Getting the distance I think makes a lot of difference there. Whoa. Well, that was a little funny towards the end. Let's just investigate that. Back to the camera. Yeah, each of these, it needs to be aimed right at the middle of the building. That was the one, that was the problem. I have to keep switching back and forth here. So play. So if I'm over here and hit play, we'll see the camera moving around, aiming at the building the whole time. So right there, it got off a little bit. Aiming not quite at the center. I should probably pick some central point and make sure it's really aimed towards it. But that's pretty good. Okay, come on. I wish I could see them both happening at the same time. Yeah, so I think that the lesson there is simply get some good distance on it. A couple of things about animating here that does not apply to Enscape. We can't switch in the same animation from a wide angle to telephoto. Each animation sequence just has one lens. Everything will be in focus near to far. That's something you can change in Enscape, which is very nice. You can zoom in on something and have near and far things lose focus, so you can concentrate on that. Something to
to be looking for here is anticipating turns. You either set up your video so you don't have to do any sharp, like 90-degree turns, or if you do, slow down greatly. Katie, you asked about doors. If we go back to a walkthrough 2, that's the one that went through the door. Walkthrough 2. Play. I found it helpful just to turn doors off in the view, just to hide them. And you do that this way. Let's change this to realistic. Change this to realistic. Here's what happens if we just play this. As you come to a door, there's just this big stretch of time where all you're looking at is not very good wood grain on doors, and then all of a sudden you burst through it, and then you're inside the room. And it's really a lot handier in visibility graphics for this view just to scroll down to doors and to turn off the panel, which is the door itself. Apply, okay. So now we can go to walkthrough. And nobody's got to care if there's a door there or not as you're doing this. Some door families, most of the times when you can choose the angle for a door, 90 or 45 or whatever, that only affects it in plan, not in 3D. We could probably make one that had an open door at 90 degrees if we wanted to substitute that in. It's not as big a deal with windows because it's transparent out there already, but doors, I think you want to sort of turn that off. One thing we can do here, which is interesting, would be as the camera moves into the room to swivel and look back at where it had come from. To keep moving forward, but looking backward. And that might be just because you want to be moving the camera line like this, but then to focus on something for a while, and then to head back into your path. So let's see what that looks like. It might induce nausea. We'll see. I want to use I want to go to my final keyframe, edit walkthrough. And then in this view, I go to active camera, and I'm going to turn it around so it's looking backwards. I'm going to go to path and move it a little farther away. So we'll see what happens here. Always fun to tell what's going on. So that was the view that we're going to end up with, even though the camera is moving backwards here. Previous frame, previous keyframe, play. So we'll come in, we go through the door, take one more, go to one more keyframe in here somewhere, and then start pivoting around backwards. Oh, it looked around in that direction, huh? I thought it was going to look around in this direction. Well, let me fix that a little bit. Active camera. I want this guy. I want to aim more that way. Next keyframe, next keyframe. I don't know if that'll do it or not. I might have to put another couple of keyframes in there to sort of force the continuum of things, but we'll see. Over here in this view, you can just, instead of playing the whole thing, you can just keep going next frame, next frame, next frame, next frame, go to the next keyframe, and then next frame to see which way it's going to be going. Oh, that's good. This is what I was looking for.
So you can really see what you're looking at. So here I'm turning around and moving. Right, so I'm moving away even as the camera has turned around completely and is moving backwards now. So go thou and do likewise. So I think there are two main considerations to be thinking here. One is, you notice that the lines are back here. I only turned them off in that other view and the background and stuff, so you'll have to be doing that each time for each view. The two concerns are, I think, primarily what's your camera path, which is determined by what you need to show best and not waste time and energy showing just walking down a corridor. If you got 3 rooms are identical, just look inside one of them, not all of them. And then the other is getting the best combination of graphic display options to show what you need to show. Do you want it to look cartoony? You can do that with edges turned on, low resolution, and simple shading. Or do you want it to look as realistic as possible, which would be larger image, more pixels, no lines, lighting, all that kind of stuff turned on. I think I'll stop now for this demonstration. How do you imagine using this in your Schneider Hall project? It will be interesting for those of you with, I'm thinking about you, Zoe, you and Jonathan, with that central atrium, to be able to move in that space, to fly through there instead of just walking through there. Come up the ramp. I mean, it would take a little doing, but it'd be cool as could be. For a straight ramp, it's easy. Just at the far end of the ramp, you just raise your camera 5 feet or whatever it happens to be. With the curved one, you'd have a little more excitement. Or you could just fly through that space, show the ramp instead of following the ramp. Do you want to show what it's like for a human to experience the space, or for a butterfly to experience the space? I really would caution you against having long, involved, going around lots of corners animations. I do a couple, but there's plenty of video editing software. Premiere, you've got Premiere as part of the Adobe suite, where you can butt them together into one longer one, or put a title card in between, or crossfade them into each other, or fade to black, or any of those pretty easy effects. I'd start thinking about it now, probably, just to think about it. Well, that's all for today. It's been fun. Goodbye, interweb friends. See you next time.